This will now finish up on the section, actually Unit 3, and we'll finish up with the subject, the topic of judgment. And then we'll go on from here on to practice. But today in this lecture we look at punishment, but also some at paradise. Not a whole lot about heaven, but a little bit. Death is mentioned again and again, as we have said before. It is certain. It's called the certain, 1599, and that's true. Doesn't the Bible say it is appointed unto man once to die, but after this the judgment? So it's not something that Muslims put aside. In other words, they talk about it. They also talk about hell a lot. They don't shy away from it. Sometimes you get the impression from evangelicals and other Christians that they don't want to talk about it or don't mention it. I remember hearing of, in fact, it's in the traditions, that you have certain advice for someone. The advice is this: you have certain duties. In fact, it says 6, but it's only 3. That when someone asks for advice, give it. That's good advice. When someone sneezes, say, God have mercy. I guess there are 4. And when someone is ill, visit him. But the final one is that when someone dies, follow him to the grave. And I have seen this over and over again. The deceased is on a charpai, or a little bed with 4 legs, and men trade off, each on the 4 corners, carrying the deceased to the grave, and the people take turns, because there is merit in carrying the coffin, or not the coffin, but the deceased. The men are walking behind, no women, but Muslims do this faithfully. They follow the person to the grave. Everyone's fate is hung around his neck, and so when death comes, it is the will of God. People will, in the Muslim world, will not. My experience was they don't put court cases against you for, you can hit somebody on the road or something like that, and there are court cases, but oftentimes Muslims will say that this is the will of God. Every man's fate is fashioned on his own neck. On the day of judgment will bring forth the scroll. There is the sense that martyrs who die in jihad will go to heaven. There is that idea in 3 and 169. It says, think not that those who are slain in Allah's way are dead. No, they live, finding their sustenance in the presence of the Lord. So then it goes on to say, they rejoice in the bounty provided by Allah, with regard to those left behind, will not yet join them in their bliss. The martyrs glory in the fact that on them is no fear. They glory in the grace and the bounty from Allah, and in the fact that Allah suffers not the reward of the faithful to be lost on the least. So yes, there is that sense that if you die in God's battle, you go to heaven. And jihad is, yes, jihad in its original meaning means struggle with yourself, perfecting yourself. But yet, if you look at history of Islam and look at the traditions, jihad is primarily warfare. 1/3 of volume 4 of Al-Bukhari is about jihad, and it certainly isn't about purifying your own soul. It's about holy warfare. So there is that sense, and that the only one who has assurance of salvation is the one who dies in battle. But again, intercession, as we have seen, there isn't such a thing as intercession. In other words, very seldom do Muslims have the idea that there's any certainty that anyone can intercede for them. Certainly not Muhammad. On the other hand, Muslims do believe in prayer, and often if you offer to pray in the name of Jesus for someone who's sick or for someone who's taking an exam or something like that, Muslims do not turn you away. Usually they do not refuse it. Now, what do they do when death comes? They burn incense, and this is done to ward off the evil spirits. They will hire someone to recite the Quran. There are people who are called Hafiz. They have memorized the entire Quran, so they will hire such a one to come and recite the Quran. They will sprinkle Zamzam water from around the Kaaba there, because that's holy water. That's special water that sanctifies the place. When the person is about gone, they will put him, grandpa or whoever it is, facing Mecca, because there's hope then, or at least that's the best thing you could do. You'll put a Quran under the pillow. And remember that Al-Ghazali talked about Muhammad's lack of assurance and agony in death, and this is also mentioned in the traditions Al-Bukhari. The terrors of the last day are very, very vivid. It says that there's no protector, no intercessor. The Quran talks about drinking boiled water. Not boiled water, but boiling water. Sorry, boiling water. And the verses there, 6 and verse 70. It says, halfway down, it says, he will find for himself no protector or intercessor except Allah. If it offered every ransom or reparation, none will be accepted. See, that means no intercession. The end of those who deliver themselves to ruin by their own acts, they will have for drink only boiling water, and for punishment one most grievous, for they persisted in rejecting Allah. Their abode is fire, in 10 and verse 8. 10 and verse 8, their abode is fire. This is pretty scary stuff because of the evil that they earned. And if they implore relief, water like melted brass will be given to them. 18 and 29. 18 and 29. Say, the truth is from thy Lord. Let him who will believe and let him who will reject it. For the wrongdoers have prepared a fire. Smoke and flames like the walls and roof of a tent will hem them in. If they implore relief, they will be granted water like melted brass that will scald their faces. How dreadful the drink, how uncomfortable a couch to recline on. You see? And then in 78, it talks about ambush. There is nothing cool about it. It says that's an expression that has to do with the heat of it. Truly, hell is a place of ambush for the transgressors, a place of destination. They will dwell therein for ages. Nothing cool shall they taste therein, nor any drink, save a boiling fluid, and a fluid dark, murky, intensely cold, and a fitting recompense for them. For they use not to fear any account for their deeds. For they impudently treated our signs as false. You see, Muhammad, he isn't messing around. He is preaching up a storm. And all things have we preserved on record, so taste the fruits of your deeds. For no increase shall we grant you except in punishment. Well, that's pretty serious, isn't it? And here's something from the traditions narrated on Nu'man bin Bashir. I heard the Prophet say that the least punished person of the hellfire people on the day of resurrection will be a man under whose arch of the feet 2 smoldering embers will be placed, because of which his brain will boil. Well, if you can imagine, if that's the least punished, so hot that his brain boils, what about the person who is punished the most? You see what I mean when I say that the scary stuff, the fear, the agony. This is really what's preached. This is also from the Hadith narrated an Nu'man bin Bashir, I heard the Prophet saying. We've already looked at just another version of it. But narrated Abu Umar, the Prophet said a woman entered hellfire because of a cat which she had tied, neither giving it food nor setting it free to eat from the vermin of the earth. I apologize, I think I previously said it was a dog, but it was in fact a cat in Bukhari volume 4. Narrated Aisha, the people will be gathered barefoot, naked, and she said, will men and women, she said, I guess, when the Prophet said that, Aisha was surprised and questioned it, and Muhammad answered this way. He said the people will be gathered barefoot, naked, and he said that the situation will be so hard, too hard for men and women to notice or pay any attention to the nakedness of the opposite sex. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet once passed by 2 graves, and he said these 2 persons are tortured not for a major sin. One never saved himself from being soiled with urine, while the other used to go about with calumnies, in other words, a deceit. And so Muhammad placed a green leaf on each one with the hopes that the punishment, the torture, would be somehow postponed or not last so long. You see the uncertainty. And then there's this bridge. The bridge that is in your PowerPoint is not a very good picture, in other words, of the bridge itself, because the bridge is most frightful. The bridge, according to Al-Ghazali, is very fearful. It is sharper than a sword, thinner than a hair, and people must traverse over it. The saved cross over, but the doomed slip off, caught by the angels with grapple hooks. And then there is much about the fire. In the Quran, it talks about hellfire in 11 and verse 11. There is something here that we should read. It talks about the punishment. Let's see. I don't believe that's. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 11:119. 11:119, and it talks about the fact that except the Lord, on whom the Lord hath bestowed his mercy, and for this did he create them, and the word of the Lord shall be fulfilled, I will fill hell with men and with jinn. It says in 19, verse 68 to 71, that not one will pass over that bridge. Not one. Now, some would take that to be purgatory. Some would say that's meaning that no one will be saved. You know, Muslims are seemingly condemned by their own faith. There is no hope in Islam, no hope of salvation. And this chapter, Maryam 19, talks about will bring them forth in their knees round about hell, then will certainly drag out from every sect all those who were worst in obstinate rebellion. Certainly we know best those who are most worthy of being burned therein. Not one of you, but will pass over it. This is a decree. Now, Muslims, understandably, could take that to mean that no one is going to escape torture. But others wouldn't take it that way. It talks about their garments being pitch in 14 and verse 50. In other words, you know how pitch burns. It's very much inflamed. It talks about yokes, chains, bars. You know, again, the language is very, very troubling. But on the other hand, heaven is a place of delicious water, rivers of milk, great wine. And funny thing, you can't drink it here, but you can drink it up there. Pure honey, according to 47 and verse 15. It talks about some of the pleasures of heaven, pleasures of paradise. You know, like we've just said, to those who drink and rivers of honey, pure and clear in it, there are for them all kinds of fruits and grace from their Lord. You see, so everything you could want in a physical sense. Someone has said that abstinence from wine helps you gain admission, and once you're there, you can enjoy the full extent once access is received. That seems to be a contradiction. Cup of camphor in 76 and verses 1 through 22. This is called al-insan, which is the word for "O man," or the man. And it talks about the glories of heaven and the nice stuff to drink, the garden, the garments of silk, and crystal clear water, and the cup of wine mixed in verse 17. In 22 it says that verily this is a reward for you, your endeavor is accepted. Well, 21, upon them will be green garments of fine silk and heavy brocade, and they will be adorned with bracelets of silver, and their Lord will give to them to drink of a wine pure and holy. Well, everything you ever wanted to have. Hearing, feeling, and tasting and smelling is absolutely fantastic. 36 is the one there, and then quite a bit about the huris. These are the virgins, the beautiful maidens, and Muslims sometimes would spiritualize this, or but really there is reason to accept it. In other words, in 44 surah, and then 54 verse, moreover, we, that's God, we shall join them to companions with beautiful, big, and lustrous eyes. Now, I'm sure that those guys in the desert, in the days of Muhammad, didn't think in symbolic terms. They thought the reality of it. And there they call for every kind of fruit in peace and security, nor will they taste death. So that's the huris in heaven, and Bukhari talks about that as well. The hadith is quite a bit on heaven. Bukhari chapter 6 narrated the Qaid, Allah's apostle, said, in paradise there's a pavilion made of a single hollow pearl 60 miles wide, in each corner of which there are wives who do not see those in the other corners, and the believers will visit and enjoy them. See, this is quite sensual. And there are 2 gardens, the utensils and the contents of which are made of so-and-so, like gold. Nothing will prevent the people staying in the Garden of Eden from seeing their Lord except the curtain of majesty over his face. So God is there, but certainly not to the extent that we think of it, because it says that when we will see his face. And Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you, so that where I am, there you may be also. We don't need the sun, because the sun, in other words, his face will give light. So it's a very sensual place for Muslims, with the huris there and one thing another. So what are the implications? I should just say one more thing about the bridge. I read this somewhere in Pul Sirat Ki Dashat. That's the horrors of the bridge. Dear Islamic brothers, it says that the reason is that at least he died, so-and-so died with faith. 1,000 years is unimaginably long. By Allah, it's impossible to bear the punishment of hellfire for even a millionth of a second. Look at the fear. Sayyiduna Hassan Basri had It has been mentioned that he did not laugh for 40 years when he was sitting. It seemed as though he was a frightened prisoner who will be executed in a short while. Whenever he used to describe scenes of the afterlife, it was as though the afterlife was in front of him. When he remained silent, it seemed as if fire was burning in his eyes. He was asked, "Why do you remain so sorrowful and terror-stricken?" He replied, "I constantly fear that if due to some of my disliked actions, Allah becomes angry with me and says, 'Go away, I will not forgive you,' then what will happen of me?" So you see, that's the kind of stuff that is preached in messages in Pakistan. Well, what are the implications? I think the implications are obvious, that we have no reason to fear. When Paul the Apostle faced death, he knew it wasn't the end. He knew that it was just a graduation. Sometimes, it's easy for us, I think, to forget how good it is to know our Savior. One of the greatest blessings for me in studying Islam is seeing how wonderful it is to have salvation through Christ. How great it is to have Jesus up there preparing a place for us. To know his peace. "My peace I give unto you, not as the world gives. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. I go to prepare a place for you." Jesus said that the prince of this world has come, but he has no hold on me. Jesus conquered death. He condemned the prince of this world. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. We have an anchor of the soul that is sure. And by his own death, he destroyed death and him that has the power of death. He is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Jesus holds the keys of heaven and hell. This is what we need to preach to our Muslim friends. The message of assurance, the message of salvation, that we have a mediator, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. What a message we have.